Would you like to play a deadly game? Hi, I'm Jonathan Soler, and today I'm going to talk about Choose or Die, also known as Curse Her. So basically, the story is a young woman named Kayla, if I remember correctly, finds a deadly retro game. So at first, the game is just asking question on the screen, and she have to reply yes or no, or this is what I do, or what I choose. And at first, the game would just change a few things in reality. For example, at one point, there is a guy who asks for more beer. He has a new beer coming on his table, appearing on his table. So at first, the game changes reality, and then the game becomes a little bit more deadly and asks for the player to choose between very dangerous, harmful, or deadly situations. And so every time there's a new level and the character Kayla with her friend, they're gonna try then to unsolve the mystery, who is behind the game, how to beat the game exactly. And it was not the most amazing movie ever made, but there are some really interesting stuff in that movie. First, it has, especially at the beginning, a very retro 80s retro gaming vibe that I thought was interesting. Some of the questions asked by the game lead to very interesting, suspenseful scenes that I've never seen exactly like that in a movie. So, of course, it's not the first time that a movie plays with a kind of a deadly game, whether it's realistic, there has been the franchise, or unrealistic, like Escape Room, no, Escape Game, I don't remember. Escape Room, I think. Truth or Dare, and this one. So it's an interesting concept, but it's not like something we've never seen before. And this one is pretty okay, although it's not the most interesting from the one that I mentioned. But there is one thing that is really interesting is that there are a few scenes that are really impressive. For example, at the very beginning of the movie, a guy, a dad who's playing the game, he's asked to choose between his son's tongue or his wife's ear. Then he gets out from his room and we can see that the wife holds a knife and the tongue of his son, and the son has a completely bleeding mouth. And I thought that was interesting. I think it would have been even more impressive and more interesting if we would have seen the son taking a knife himself and cutting his tongue himself, like, what am I doing? Make it stop. There's another scene that was very powerful in the movie, I think, probably the most impressive, where the main character, Kayla, she's playing the game. She's in a bar and there is a waitress who drops some glass on the floor and the glass shatters in thousands of pieces. And then the game asks, should she clean or not, the waitress? So Kayla shows yes, and the waitress start to take a piece of glass, and you can feel it's very well acted, that part. You can feel that she does it very reluctantly. She takes the glass and start to put it in her mouth, chew it, and swallow it. And all the while, you can see that she's completely afraid. She doesn't know what happened, and she doesn't want that to happen. So it was really interesting to see a character who is forced to do something against their will. And then she does it again, and that scene was really impressive. Now, the problem, because I said the movie is far from being perfect, the problem is that the 80 retro style quickly turned into a very generic style in terms of filmmaking. For the music, they try to do something original. So I will always support directors who have bold and original choices. Although I didn't like the music in the movie, was a little bit like industrial movies, like poo, 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 poo. It's not my favorite type of music. It's a little bit annoying. I didn't enjoy. And I think it was a mistake because on a movie like that, I think they could have gone with a kind of synthesizer, John Carpenter type of retro music. I think it would have fit better first, and I think it would have been much more enjoyable. And it can still be scary, as you know, with all the famous John Carpenter's soundtrack. So on that point, I think It was not the best choice, but since it was bold, original, different from what we used to see in horror movie, I will still support it. And then also after that scene with the waitress, most of the scene, the next level of the game, are not as intense or interesting. For example, there is one scene where her mother, Kayla, she's attacked by a big rat, we can guess, and we see that scene through the monitors, through the screen in kind of a retro gaming style. She just has her mother on the phone and gave her some instruction to eventually survive the rat. And I thought, although the phone call was intense in terms of emotion, the fact of watching everything happen in a retro style old video game console, I thought it was a bit goofy, and I could not take that scene very seriously or feel like it was very threatening because of the very old retro style of the game. And then there is another scene where she has to choose between her friend and her brother who is passed away a long time ago. It was not very thrilling, not very horrific, not even very suspenseful. And then they try to find out what's wrong with that game, who created that game, everything that happens then up until almost the end. I thought it was not as great as those two scenes that I mentioned, the intro scene with the father and his son cutting or having his tongue cut by his mother, and the one in the bar that I thought was very powerful. And if only that's my only problem with that movie, but it's the problem of a lot of movie, unfortunately. If only with such an interesting, although as I said, not very original concept, they would have spent a little bit more time trying to find some very impactful, very powerful scenes, like the one where the waitress start to chew some glass. If they would have brainstormed a little bit more that kind of scene and put them all throughout the movie, I think the movie would have been much more powerful. If they would have went also with a John Carpenter style synthesizer music, or even like it follows has more electronic music, although it is reminiscent of soundtrack like John Carpenter's. It was very original, very good. I think it would have also increased the movie quality. So all in all, I think it's a movie that is far from being perfect. I would even say that it's a not very great movie, but with a few scenes that just for them makes it worthwhile to watch. And also, it's not a boring movie, so if you want to give it a watch, you can. If you have nothing else to watch, it's not very long, it's not extremely boring. It's just not as thrilling as it could have been, and it proved that it could have been thrilling with the two scenes that I mentioned earlier. So that was my take on Choose or Die. If you have seen the movie, I would love to know if you've loved it or not really. That's all I've got for today. See you in the next video.